if fans travel to Germany, and many tens of thousands will, how expensive should this tournament be when it comes to paying for a ticket? Danny, what we know is this. For the Euros, UEFA has introduced prime seats in Category 1 for the Euros next summer in Germany. For the final, Simon, the most expensive seats will rise from €945 previously at Wembley to €2,000. Now, while you take a gulp and a sharp intake of breath at that, they say, yeah, but that's not all. Because here at UEFA, we're also introducing fan first tickets, the cheapest category. So for €30 for group matches and €95 for the final. Simon, what do you think UEFA are doing here? Do you think they're covering their own backs here? We're making them very cheap here, but indulging us, we're making them very expensive there.
Won't be many of the cheap ones.
Well, the commercial reality of it is where does the money go? Because that's the question that needs to flow through. What's the purpose of charging these prices, and where does this money go? If this money goes back into the pyramid of football to be able to develop grassroots football, which in fact is its purpose, because these organisations are supposed to be not-for-profit, they're more about funding the organisational structure of football, and it comes with that implication. And there's always this endless criticism about the necessity to develop facilities and environments and create better environments for young kids to play football in. So with that in mind, that is the driving factor behind the commercialisation of the pricing of ticket policies. And there will be a queue as long as your arm of people that will buy these tickets. And when people start resisting these prices, then we'll have an argument to put forward about the reality of what seems to be a very exorbitant amount of pricing policies, but this is the price on the ticket now for football.
But should it be though, Simon? And I get what you're saying and understand it, but Danny, it's not as if UEFA are skint. UEFA at the end of June 2023 in reserves have €358 million. Come next summer, come the end of the Euros in Germany, the reserves will have risen to €500 million. So here's an idea. Yeah, we like the €30. We like the 95,000. We like the €95 ticket for the final. But why do you need to have the €2,000 tickets at all?
Because idiots pay it. I mean, even at the last Euros, when we had the luxury of being able to get some tickets for certain games, because I went to a couple of them, took my boy to one, for example. I mean, the prices you're paying, those cheaper tickets are generally really poor seats, and there's not many of them available if you can get them at all. And the ticket prices for the final. I actually didn't go to final because I was gonna go and take the kids and stuff. And when they came back with the 900 and something a ticket, just on principle, I thought, nah, chance.
UEFA are saying that.
I think you're right.
UEFA are saying in this diatribe that they expect half of all the 2.7 million tickets to fall into the fan first category.
Should it be more than half?
I'd like to see that actually happen.
But you don't think it? I mean, your initial response was that you think there'd be very small amounts of them. So we're saying that 1.3 million of these tickets will fall into the pricing category that is probably more in the realms of reasonable contribution towards a prestigious international tournament. You're watching the best players in Europe playing for their countries in the most prestigious international tournaments.
I think one of the problems you've also got, Simon, and this is nothing that they can do anything about, I'm sure, is that when those cheaper tickets do become available, and especially if it's a decent game with decent international teams, what happens is, of course, they end up on the black market they end up being sold. So the cheap tickets end up being sold at disproportionate prices anyway, which there's nothing you can do. But
it's a sad fact of life.
I found my experience of going to the Russian World Cup. I mean, I've been the last 3 World Cups now. I know it's different than the Euros, but I've done the Euros as well. But generally, the ability and availability, I should say, to be able to get those cheaper tickets is very, very difficult to get them.
I mean,
they go really quickly, and there's not as many as they say.
It's about affordability, Simon. I mean, if UEFA had anything about them, you could argue that one of their priorities is to make it affordable for all. So should fan first not be for all tickets? You shouldn't be precluded because you can't afford some of the premium seats.
No,
and be assured the cheapest category are going to be damn difficult to get your hands on.
But they are saying that the cheapest category makes up 50%. So that means there's only 2.7 million tickets available.
Is 50% enough?
Well, again, the commercial argument has to come into play. We've got FIFA running a World Cup on the basis of the revenue streams that the Americans have promised them for the USA World Cup, that they were going to generate 15 billion. It's about the deployment. I know what you're saying. There's a 300 million sitting in reserve. Well, okay, there's lots of entities that have lots of cash on reserve. Next time there's a crisis in football or a pandemic, they'll need that cash. They'll need these things. That's why you have cash on reserve. You shouldn't run yourself to a situation where you've got no reserves. We can't all be like the imbeciles in the FA that find themselves in a position where they need to sell the National Stadium to try and fund grassroots football at one particular time. So I don't take much notice of a business that generates, the UEFA, by the way, that generates 3, 5, 6 billion a year through a variety of enterprises, including the Champions League, that has 300 million cash on deposit. That's not hardly huge numbers. All right? So let's get that into context. But the commerciality of football and where this money is going and what it's being utilised for, if it's going to enhance the lives of a group of people in a conclave that no one ever sees, that there's no transparency of where this money goes, and it's ultimately people that are getting benefits out of it, like Seferin and his little gang.
Is that reality? Is that a reality? In your opinion?
In what? My opinion of what?
What happens to the funding or how it's
Well, yeah, because they have to publish what happens with the funding. They declare where their money goes and what goes with it.
There is clarity.
Of course there is. Yeah, but what we also we won't necessarily see, we'll see is the huge salaries they might pay one themselves or the commercial benefits and perks. That's not quite as clear.
One thing I might throw in here, the prime seats in the group games are €400.
Yes. They're the best seats.
You want to go to one of the best seats to say England against so-and-so in a group stages match. Now, that's all right, but why should it rise to €2,000 for the final? Because
it's the final.
Because thousands of other people supporting other nations have gone home, and the only fans who have remained are fans of the two competing nations in the final. Why not just have it across the board that it's 400 all the way to the end?
Because it's a commercial entity.
People will pay it.
People are paying this. There's a price point. We're saying 50% of that stadium will operate at a certain price point by the nature of what they're suggesting here. The other 50%, this is a commercial exercise. This is about generating revenue.
Sure.
The reality of this revenue is where does it get deployed and where does it go? Now, no one has a God-given right to sit in the best seats. Not you, not me, or not anyone else.
They're not that different either.
And the bottom line is they will price for that. People will pay for it. So they get the commercial balance right between what they charge those that can afford it and what they charge those that are valuable assets to the game, which are the fans that will go wherever they can to watch the games and pay a reasonable price. And I don't think it's disproportionate to the product that they're offering. This is football now. This is what people wanted. They wanted it in domestic football. They wanted the best stadiums. They want the best training grounds. They want the best players. They want the best. Where does this money come from? It comes from the game itself, from broadcasters, and it comes from the revenue that's generated. So with that in mind, if you don't want to pay £2,000 to have the best seat in the house, don't pay £2,000 and don't sit in the best seat in the house.
I think also geographically, the Euro is very different to the World Cup. I mean, in Doha, as you well know, you're both out there, but very few of the stadiums were full capacity. Maybe that's because people, a lot of the nations playing there couldn't have all their supporters travel, and it was so expensive to get there before you even start paying for the tickets. Whereas in Germany, of course, you're going to have so many more thousands of people there wanting to enjoy it and pay and watch the games. And of course, the stadiums are huge anyway. But
it's just what UEFA say and what UEFA do are two different things. I mean, recently they say they want to harness football to foster change in society.
But they would say
that's lovely.
But they would say,
lovely. What's that look like? Exactly. €2,000 for a seat.
But they would say that offering 50% of the stock. We're having a debate about whether we think that's enough. What was it before? Was there any governance before? Any price protection before?
It was €945 before,
right?
For the most expensive.
But that's the nature of the beast. Everything inflates, and opportunities become significant in the better seats. And we're talking about a minority of those seats. They're the best seats. There's only going to be a few of those. But we've now got an initiative. I'm not an advocate for UEFA, by the way. I'm sitting here saying that have we seen a previous initiative spelled out to us that we are actually carving out 50% of the entire stock. There's 2.7 million tickets. We're going to allocate 1.3 million of those tickets under a fans first initiative. That would, to me, at my mind, they haven't done it before. That would instigate or initiate the thinking that there's progress and there is value being attached.
Yeah,
might not be enough. But it's better than it was.
Yeah, if it
I
is,
get it, Sam, when you're saying you've got to have a lot in reserve as well, because you don't know what's around the next corner.
Well, we've seen that, haven't we?
We've seen it with the pandemic.
If they actually do, if that's true, well, it's got to be true. I would imagine if they're saying it, you're right. If there is 50% at that cheaper level, it's a good starting point.
Would you pay €2,000 for a seat at the final? If your nation, if England were there, if whoever was there, would you pay that? Do you think it's reasonable to pay it for a prime seat?
No, nobody's going to say that's reasonable.